Welcome to the Bedtime Stories. Chapter 1, The Knock. The rain was conducting a symphony on my library's skylight the afternoon my carefully alphabetized world ended. Not with a bang, but with the soft, insistent tap of a young woman's knuckles against the glass of the reference desk. I'd been inputting the last entries for our annual acquisition report, the final bureaucratic task of my 37-year career as head librarian of the Carlton Public Library. In 72 hours, my successor, a vibrant, tech-savvy woman named Anya who called books legacy content, would take over. I was to be presented with a gold-embossed certificate and a predictable pension at a Friday luncheon I dreaded. "Excuse me, Mrs. Reed." The voice was soft but carried a peculiar density, like a stone dropped into the deep, still well of my Wednesday afternoon. I looked up, adjusting my reading glasses. The young woman standing before me couldn't have been more than 30. She was drowning in a worn peacoat several sizes too large, and her dark hair was plastered to her forehead by the rain. But it was her eyes that arrested me. They were the color of wet slate, and in them swam a current of such profound, ancient anxiety that it seemed misplaced on her young face. It was the look of someone who has carried a secret until it became a physical burden. "May I help you?" I asked, the professional cadence automatic. "Are you Evelyn Reed?" Evelyn Reed, who was married to Michael Reed. The question bypassed all library etiquette. A cold, fine tremor, unrelated to the library's erratic heating, started in my hands. "I am." "Can I ask who's inquiring?" "My name is Lila Chen," she said, and the name was a key, turning a lock in a door I'd sealed in my mind 22 years, 4 months, and 16 days prior. "My father was Arthur Chen." "He worked with your husband." The air left the room. The steady tap 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 of the rain grew deafening. "Arthur Chen. Michael's friend. The journalist. The one who died in the hit-and-run 6 weeks before my husband's fatal heart attack on a business trip to Seattle. 2 tragedies, the police and everyone said. Terribly bad luck." "I see," I said, my voice remarkably steady. The librarian's armor held. "Your father was a good man. I'm very sorry for your loss." The platitude tasted like dust. She didn't acknowledge the sentiment. Her eyes darted around the quiet library, past Mrs. Henderson dozing over a large print romance, past the 2 college students sharing earbuds at a computer terminal. "I need to speak with you," she whispered, leaning in. The scent of cold rain and damp wool enveloped me. "Somewhere not public. It's about my father. And your husband. And a box." Chapter 2, The Box in the Basement. I took her to the rarest of places in a public library, true privacy. The Historical Archives Room, a windowless vault where we kept the town's original land deeds and crumbling newspapers from the 1800s. I switched on a single, harsh fluorescent light. It hummed like an angry insect. Lila shed her giant coat, revealing a frame so slight she seemed barely there. From a satchel that had seen better days, she withdrew not a book, but a manila envelope, swollen and discolored at the edges with a peculiar, map-like pattern of water stains. It looked wounded. "My mother gave this to me on her deathbed last month," Lila said, her voice low and hurried, as if she'd rehearsed this speech in the dark for years. She was too afraid to ever open it. My father left it with her. His instructions were explicit: if my death is ever called an accident, give this to Lila when she's old enough to understand. But only if she comes asking. I've been asking my whole life. With careful, reverent fingers, she untied the string closure and slid the contents onto the archival table. The first thing I saw was a photograph. Grainy, taken at night, likely with a long lens. It showed a shadowy dock, skeletal gantry cranes silhouetted against a bruised purple sky. And there, caught in a splash of light from a warehouse door, were two men. One was Arthur Chen, younger than I remembered, his face sharp with intensity. The other was my Michael. My Michael. But not my Michael. This man wasn't the gentle, slightly rumpled accountant who fretted over our tax returns and could lose an entire Sunday to a crossword puzzle. This man stood with a coiled tension, his shoulders set against the damp night. He was accepting a thick envelope from a third figure, a man whose face was half turned away, but whose profile I'd seen before, in a newspaper clipping about a federal racketeering trial years later. Stefan the Silo Markov. Port City Muscle. I don't understand, I heard myself say, the words floating somewhere outside my body. Keep looking, Lila urged. There were more photos. Michael entering a nondescript office building downtown, the one that supposedly housed Coastal Textile Import-Export, the firm he worked for. Michael in a diner, talking animatedly with Arthur. Michael looking over his shoulder, a blur of paranoia captured on film. Then came the documents. Photocopies of ledgers, columns of figures in my husband's precise, engineer-neat handwriting. But these weren't fabric inventory lists or freight costs. The headings were codes: M22DG7 transit fee. The amounts were large. 5 figures. Sometimes 6. And there were initials, SM, VC, GK. And notes, in Arthur's chaotic scrawl, on lined reporter's notebook paper: M confirms skimming operation. Port Authority Controller, GK, on payroll. Silo, SM, handles enforcement. Money laundering through textile front. M terrified. Has created a black ledger. The real one. Hiding it. For Lila's future, he says. His insurance. Another note, the writing more frantic, they know. M says they're closing the loop. We have to go to the feds now. Meet at the usual place. 11 p.m. The date was 2 days before Arthur Chen was struck and killed by a speeding vehicle with stolen plates that was never found. The final sheet was a single, typed line, unsigned, "The black ledger is the key. Follow the savings bond. It's for the child." I gripped the edge of the table. The polished wood felt like the only solid thing in a universe that had just liquefied. My husband, my quiet Michael, had not died of a coronary occlusion at age 42. He had been a whistleblower, or a participant, or something in between, in something rotten that reached into the very foundations of our city's port. And it had killed him. All my life, Lila said, her voice cracking, I felt my father's fear. It was in the walls of our house after he died. My mother jumped at shadows until the day she died. And this. She gestured at the damning spread, this is the shadow. My father wasn't investigating a story. He was living in one. And he brought your husband into it. Why are you here, Lila? I asked, my professional facade finally fracturing. Why now, after 22 years? Because last week, she said, her wet slate eyes locking onto mine, a man came to my apartment. He said he was from the Historical Society, asking about my father's old work. He was polite. Too polite. He had cold eyes. And he knew things. Small, specific things about my childhood that aren't in any public record. He asked if I'd ever come across my father's research files. She hugged herself. He was a warning. Someone is stirring the mud at the bottom of the pond. The statute of limitations on some of this, on tax evasion for hidden assets, it expires in a matter of weeks. If that money my father's note mentions exists, the savings bond for the child, it becomes claimable. Or it becomes evidence that gets buried forever. I think they're cleaning house. And I'm the last loose thread. She took a shuddering breath. I have no one, Mrs. Reed. No family. No money. I'm a freelance copy editor living paycheck to paycheck. And I am so scared. You're the only other person named in this nightmare. I didn't know where else to go. I looked from her terrified face to the photograph of my husband, a stranger in the night. For 37 years, I had built a life on order, on the Dewey Decimal System, on the certainty that truth could be found in the correct volume on the correct shelf. This was chaos. This was a book misfiled in the fiction section that contained a very real, very deadly truth. Do you have this with you? I asked, pointing to the note about the black ledger and the bond. She shook her head. Only what's here. The originals are, somewhere safe. I made a decision then, not with my heart, which was a tangled knot of grief and betrayal, but with my librarian's mind. A problem had been presented. It required research. Give me the weekend, I said. There's something. In my basement. Michael's things. I never I never could sort through them properly. There's a box. Chapter 3, The Strong Box and the Voice from the Grave. My house on Elm Street was a museum to a life that had never truly existed. The carefully chosen neutral tones, the shelves of books arranged by genre and then author, the vacuum lines on the carpet, it was the diorama of Evelyn Reed, respectable widow. That night, it felt like a stage set. I bypassed the living room and went straight to the basement door. I hadn't been down there in years. The air was cold and smelled of concrete and memories. In the corner, under a dusty drop cloth beside my long-retired canning supplies, was the cardboard banker's box. Michael, personal, written in my own neat hand from a lifetime ago. My hands didn't shake as I carried it upstairs. They were steady, surgical. This was an archival retrieval. In my dining room, under the bright glow of the chandelier, I opened the box. On top lay The Ghost of My Old Life, a program from the community theatre production of Arsenic and Old Lace we'd ushed for, a dried corsage from a long-ago wedding, a stack of birthday cards I'd made for him, embarrassingly earnest in their construction paper joy. Beneath the sentiment lay the substance, his diplomas, his professional certifications, a bundle of love letters from our courtship I couldn't bring myself to read. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a soft flannel cloth, was a small, gunmetal grey strongbox. It was unremarkable, the kind sold in office supply stores. It was locked. I turned it over. Taped to the bottom, with a strip of yellowing adhesive, was a small, tarnished key. Next to it, also taped, was a standard USB flash drive, an ancient model with barely any storage. The heart I thought was numb gave a painful, lurching squeeze. He'd left me a key. I inserted the drive into my laptop. A single folder appeared, labeled for Evie's ears only. Inside, one audio file. I clicked play. Evelyn, my love. My brave, beautiful, orderly Evelyn. His voice. Not the voice of my later memories, tinged with a quiet fatigue, but his younger voice, the one from our first apartment, full of warmth and energy now strained through a filter of static and palpable fear. If you're hearing this, the worst has happened. And I am so sorry. I've lied to you. Not about loving you. Never that. But about everything else. The recording was a confession, a narrative, and a last will and testament, all in one. He spoke of meeting Arthur Chen, the idealistic young journalist sniffing around rumors of corruption at the port. Michael, the forensic accountant for Coastal Textile, had found discrepancies, huge shipments of fabric that didn't exist, money flowing to shell companies in the Caymans. He'd gone to Arthur, thinking he was reporting a crime. I was so naive, Evie. Arthur was excited. He said this was bigger than embezzlement. It was a smuggling pipeline. Drugs, maybe arms. The port controller, a man named Gerald Knox, was the linchpin. Arthur wanted to go to the feds immediately. But then, they approached me. Them was Stefan Markov. They didn't threaten him. They offered him a choice: keep doing his job, but now create a second set of books, the white ledger for the authorities, and the real one, the black ledger for them. They would double his salary, paid in cash. They implied his cooperation would keep his pretty young wife safe. They showed him pictures of me leaving the library. I was trapped. I thought if I played along, I could gather more evidence for Arthur. I became their bookkeeper. I documented everything. Every bribe, every shipment, every payment to city officials. I kept the real ledger hidden. Arthur knew. It was our insurance, we thought. His voice broke. Then they found out about Arthur. They knew he was the journalist. They gave me an ultimatum: give them Arthur's notes, or they'd come for you. I stalled. I told Arthur to run. He refused. He said we had to go to the feds together. We set a meeting. The night of the meeting, Arthur was killed. It was a message. For me. We can reach anyone. I knew I was next. But I couldn't run. They'd find you. So, I made a plan. The money they paid me, the blood money. I couldn't keep it. I converted the last payment, the biggest one, into a savings bond. For Arthur's daughter, Lila. A trust, in her name. It's in a safety deposit box at the First Mercantile Bank on Grand. Key is with this drive. The bond is the first clue. He took a shuddering breath on the recording. The black ledger, the real one, with all the names, dates, account numbers, it's too dangerous to keep in one place. I've broken it apart. Scattered it. But I've left a map. A catalogue. You're the only one who can follow it, my brilliant librarian. You know my system. You know how I think. The password for the map is, it's us, Evie. It's our story. Find the ledger. It's my redemption. Use it to protect Lila. And then, for God's sake, be safe. Forget me if you have to. I never deserved you. The recording ended with a soft click. I sat in the silent dining room for a long time. The man I had grieved for 2 decades was not the man who had died. He was both a coward and a hero. A collaborator and a would-be savior. The orderly narrative of my life was ashes. But a task remained. A final cataloging project. Find the black ledger. Follow the bond. Chapter 4, First Mercantile and the Numbers Guy. First Mercantile on Grand had been absorbed by a national chain a decade ago. Its old Art Deco facade now housed a sleek, soulless branch. The young assistant manager was politely baffled by my request to access a safety deposit box rented in 2001. It would have been transferred to our central vault during the merger, but if there's been no activity in over 20 years. She typed rapidly. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh. Box 217. There's a perpetual rental fee paid through a trust. It's still active. The box itself was in a sterile, private room. The key from the strongbox fit perfectly. Inside was no stack of cash, no glittering diamonds. Just a single, official-looking document in a clear plastic sleeve, a U.S. Series EE savings bond, issued to Lila Chen, a minor, via the Chen Family Trust. Face value, $250,000. With 22 years of accrued interest, it was now worth just over $275,000. Paper-clipped to it was a small, cream-colored business card. No name. Just a phone number, handwritten. And a tiny, penciled symbol in the corner, a set of balanced scales, with a single feather on one side. I knew that symbol. It was doodled in the margins of Michael's old engineering notebooks. His private mark for equilibrium for a solution that was just, if not easy. Back home, I stared at the card. This was the next clue. Calling it was a point of no return. I thought of Lila Chen's terrified eyes. I thought of the man with cold eyes who visited her. I dialed the number. It rang 5 times before a calm, measured voice answered. Yes. I was given this number. With a bond. And a drawing of scales with a feather. A long pause. The feather is from the once and future king, the voice said, not a question. The boy who would be king pulled a sword from a stone. The librarian is pulling a truth from a lie. Name the chapter. It was a challenge. A test. My mind, trained for retrieval, accessed the memory instantly. It was Michael's favorite book. He reread it every few years. The chapter is called The Sword in the Stone, I said. But in the edition he loved, the 1958 paperback, it's simply Chapter 1. Another pause, then a soft exhalation. Evelyn. I've been waiting for your call for a very long time. My name is Gerald Stone. But my friends, the few I have, call me Jerry. Can you meet? Somewhere very public. The reading room of your library. Tomorrow, at noon. For the next chapters or story, subscribe it please and comment down.